Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for dialing into our webinar session this morning. My name's Misha Bristow. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Paycheck. I'm joined this morning by Jodie Hill from Thrive Law. Jodie will just give you a brief overview of who she is and a little bit of background to Thrive Law, just to give you more of an understanding of the reason for the presentation today. Jodie?
Sorry, you muted me. Hi, guys. Loving the technical stuff. It's always the way with webinars. But look, thank you so much for having me. My name's Jodie Hill. I'm a solicitor and I'm the founder and managing director of Thrive Law. We're a law firm based in Leeds, and we specialise in HR and also mental health in the workplace. So real specialist. I set up the firm having had my own mental breakdown and my own lived experience. So I kind of speak from an employer's perspective, an employee's perspective, and also looking at this within the realms of the law and the legal obligations that employers have. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm going to talk a little bit about furlough as well in home working and how that impacts on mental health. So there's a bit of a mixture within there, and talk about some top tips that you guys can start to implement for yourself and for your team.
Perfect, thank you, Jodie. So just off the back of what Jodie said then, the agenda for today's session, Jodie is going to run you through the topics that are, I suppose, very common at the moment. They are the conversation that everybody is having in terms of home working, furlough and mental health, but there will also be time for a live question and answer session. So any questions that you do have throughout today's presentation, please keep them coming. There's a question box on the right hand side of your screen, so if you just pop them through there, we will work through them throughout the session. So please put them through, and don't hold back either, and don't ask anything that may be super personal. Jodie may want to follow up with perhaps separately, but anything more generic or anything you want to understand perhaps for yourself or even for your workforce, then please send them through, and yeah, we'll work them through at the end of the session today. So I'm going to hand over to Jodie now, who's going to take you through the presentation.
Perfect, thank you so much. So working from home, I think everyone's kind of got used to working from home now, and I think when the guidance first came in, it was a bit confusing as to who was supposed to work at home, and obviously it did change slightly in that and originally we were told to work from home if we could, and then we were told to work from home unless it was impossible to do so, and employers were really encouraged to innovate. And I'm really glad that employers have been innovating, actually, because what we've seen is the ability for the entire country in most areas to work from home. So I think for employers, we've been able to see that it does work. It's been a challenge for many people, but actually there's a lot of positives that I think that have come out of working from home, and I'll go through those a little bit later. So in terms of practical things that people need to be thinking about when working from home, and I'm sure most of you will have covered these, but there's a couple of bits in here where I've spoken to people on our free helpline where they've been, their employers haven't considered some of these areas. So it's definitely worth belt and braces approach and going through every single one. So the first thing I want to talk about is about health and safety, and there's quite a lot in the media at the moment around whether it's safe to return to work, but I'm talking about health and safety at home. So this is looking at conducting home working risk assessments and DSE assessments from home, and making sure that it's really personal to that individual and their workspace and their environment. Because some people have been thrusted into home working and they might not have furniture to sit on, they might not have even a spare room if they live with lots of people. So it's understanding what that individual's going to be, that environment that they're going to be working in, and whether that's conducive to a productive workplace. So I think from my perspective, and what has really worked well for us and our clients and our staff, is conducting those assessments periodically. Things can change depending on if people have children at home, or their partners are now working at home, and that kind of thing. So there's lots of variables. So I wouldn't just do one of the working at home assessments. I'd revisit that periodically, and perhaps every month at the moment, just because of the amount of change that's going on. If you don't conduct the working from home risk assessments, there's likely to be a bit of a disconnect with your staff, and I think that one of the most important things when working from home is staying connected with your team. It's looking at ways to communicate with them. And I think the starting point is, when you do that assessment, is asking them, how would they like to be communicated with? I know personally, I'm kind of dying by death. It's like death by Zoom calls at the moment. And actually back to back Zoom calls can be really, really exhausting for people. So whereas other people actually really like a video because they live on their own and they really want to see someone's face. So I would use those risk assessments to establish how you are going to stay connected with your team, and that might vary from individual to individual. And also it will hopefully support them with their mental health, because if you're staying connected with your team whilst they're working from home, they still feel part of a team. The real risk working from home is that you then start to have a disengaged and demotivated workforce, because they don't have that workplace banter environment where they just have those catch-ups with people. The other thing I'd say about being connected is about encouraging the team to talk between themselves. It's not all on you as the employer. So what we do at Thrive is, I've always had working from home as at the core of what we do. So our staff are already working from home, but one of the key things is around flexible working and saying, well, you're working from home, so actually, you work the hours you need to work, provided it obviously meets the business needs. But what you'll find is you actually get a more productive workforce by, rather that they're all working from home, they don't need to work 9 till 5. So I think when working from home and you have that risk assessment, establish what hours are they most productive when working from home. And it might be that then they can stagger it, say, with their partner or with childcare as well. So I think there's a lot to be gained from asking those questions at the beginning. And if you haven't done it yet, then there's no time like the present to actually reach out to those members of your team. The other thing that I'm really, really passionate about is making sure people get outside, because I know for a fact that I just sit. I love my job so much. I just sit here and I'm just typing away, and then all of a sudden it's like 3 o'clock. So I actually make time for breaks, and I make sure I get outside, and I tell my staff to do the same. And I very much practice what I preach on that, because I think as leaders and as managers and as business owners, we have to lead the way. We can't just tell people what they need to do and then not do it ourselves. So getting outside is really, really important. And I know now, obviously, we're allowed outside for a limited time. So encouraging people to go outside for breaks is really, really helpful. For not just their mental health, but for their physical health, because they need that movement. Other practical bits, just working from home, I'd just say, have a think about when you do that risk assessment, whether or not everyone's got the right equipment. And presumably now everybody's working from home, so they've already dealt with that. But you might find when you do the risk assessment that actually someone's identified that actually their back's starting to hurt. So they might need an elevated thing for their laptop, or a mouse or something like that. And it's just these little tweaks that can make a real difference when working from home. And you might also want to consider whether or not you're going to pay any expenses working from home. Now, it's not mandatory to do that, and I know a lot of organisations have had discussions with their staff about it, and their staff have said, well, we're making such a significant saving on travel and parking that actually we're not bothered about that. So there is government guidance, and what I can do for everyone after this is I've actually created a bit of a kind of like a transcript for people that has got all the links to all the stuff I'm talking about. So if anyone wants more information, by all means, don't write everything down. I've got a document that I can send to you with a lot more detail in and with the links. And it has the links to the government page for the recommendations of how much to pay people if you want to. But like I say, it's not mandatory. One of the challenges I've found from speaking to clients and just generally advising in this area is about the balance of staying connected and monitoring staff and monitoring output, because this isn't normal working from home. When we were working from home before lockdown, there was still the ability to come into the office or to meet people outside of your household. And the reality is the pressures are very different working from home now as they were before, and as they will be moving forward as things change. And so monitoring your team is obviously important, but you want to strike a balance and it not become some kind of micromanaging, I need to ring you every hour type conversation. So that's again why the risk assessments can come in really helpful, because you can agree a way forward so that the expectations and the objectives are really, really clear from the outset, rather than the employee feeling like you're checking up on them all the time. So communication is, like I say, for me, it's the most important thing when working from home, and it's also the most important thing when it comes to mental health, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. Some of the practical things that you need to consider is data security. So if you're working from home, or your staff working from home, are their networks secure? Is your data secure? Have you communicated your privacy policies to them? Have you ensured that they've got the correct firewall, antivirus and all that jazz? So it's making sure that you're doing all of those compliance bits that are really important for your business to stay safe. And we know that there's a lot of organisations that have been hacked recently, and so these things are really, really important to meet your GDPR obligations. And also insurance. I know that as part of your mortgage applications, often you can have to declare that you are or aren't working from home, because obviously you're at home a lot more. So making sure that your staff have identified that, but also that your equipment is insured in their home. So it's just checking those policies, that there's no exclusions, and that actually you've crossed all those T's and dotted the I's when it comes to the compliance side, and that you're fully protected. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is a little bit about furlough, and I'm not going to talk loads about furlough because it's about to change. So we are expecting this week the new guidance, because we've had about 5 revisions of the guidance now, and the new guidance is expected to talk about the changes from August onwards. So what those changes are likely to look like, and by all means, once they've been announced, if anyone's not clear what they mean, do contact me. We've got a free advice line which I'll give you at the end. But what the government is intending, should I say, to do is to integrate people back to work and have an air of flexibility in terms of working and being on furlough. So to be announced, and when that is announced, it'll be really interesting. But obviously there'll be a link there with people's mental health, and actually using this scheme in the right way could assist people with that integration in back into work, because some people will have been at home on furlough, been feeling extremely demoralised, demotivated, without a sense of purpose, quite lonely, while the rest of their team are at work. It can be really, really difficult, especially where you've got that disparity of people working and people on furlough. So you do have to consider that, and it is really, really important for all communication to go to all staff, whether they're furlough or home working. You shouldn't treat them differently. And I think there's been, from what I've seen, there's been a real confusion over what can we do. Well, you can do online training. You can do as much or as little as you want, as long as you're paying them the national minimum wage when they're on furlough. So if you're doing any training for your working staff, then make sure you also integrate your furloughed staff onto that. But it's also a great opportunity to do mental health training, do your diversity and inclusion training, all the bits, or even something really specific to your industry, all those bits that you keep meaning to do. Use furlough, because actually the government are paying their salary or percentage of it while they're at home, and it's a really good opportunity, one, to keep them engaged, keep them connected, and to keep them upskilled. So if you're not already doing that and you do have furloughed staff, then it's definitely something that you can consider, and there's loads of free stuff available, so it's definitely worth diving in on the internet and having a look at what's available. Just a quick thing on furlough as well is those who are on 0 hours contracts are really impacted, because they're not eligible for furlough. It's only, well, they are, but then what happens is employers just don't give them any hours, and if employers just don't give them hours, they don't receive any money. So you've really got to think about the impact of, if you have 0 hours contracts, the impact that has on someone's mental health. They have no idea when they're next earning, they're not receiving anything from furlough, and ideally, if you can bring anyone back first, my suggestion would be to bring those on 0 hours contracts back, because they've been hit really, really hard. And that has a profound impact on their mental health. So really think about that. Depending on the type of workforce you have, it might not be relevant to some of you, but it's just something we've seen so many people come through our helpline in a really desperate state, because employers obviously can't afford to keep them, and they can't afford to even pay them the furlough money, because they have to pay that up front. So what they've decided is just not to pay them at all, and actually under those contracts that's lawful legally. So and then the final thing is on furlough is just around holidays, and again these are bits that all link with mental health, and holidays are supposed to be there for us to chill, for us to relax, for us to take a break. Now, I find that really difficult. I don't know about anybody else, but I find it extremely difficult to relax when on, oh, sorry, that's my phone. I find it extremely difficult to relax when on furlough, because we'll just turn that off. Extremely difficult to relax when on holiday at home. I tried to take a day off over the bank holiday and ended up working most of it. And I think because we're working from home, and or even those who are on furlough, they're already at home, they're already doing nothing. So I think the difficulty that we have is if you're asking staff to be on holiday whilst they're on furlough or working from home, it's almost not a holiday for them, because it's not a break. So the law says that you can. I get lots of questions about holidays, furlough, home working, all that. You can ask someone to be on holiday whilst they're on furlough. That is absolutely fine, but you must pay them 100%. You can't just pay them the 80%. You can claim 80% back from the furlough scheme, and you don't have to unfurlough them to put them on holiday. But I would strongly recommend that you allow people to keep some holiday moving forward, because I think it's really, really important that people have a break after all of this. To help employers, what has happened is the government have announced that you can have up to 2 years carryover for those holidays. So it means that once everyone comes back, they don't have to rush and take all those holidays. And I think from an employer's perspective, you need to be managing expectations and really setting out clearly when you will be allowing people to take holidays. I've said to my staff, it's first come, first serve. And if everybody puts a holiday request in August, it's unlikely to be approved. So it's managing those expectations and explaining to people that they will be able to carry them over. It'll just ease a lot of anxiety. So mental health. So as I said at the beginning, I've got anxiety and PTSD. So I kind of talk from an employer's perspective, but I also talk from my own lived experience and from some of the tools and techniques that we've used at Thrive and through our clients as well. So hopefully it can give you pretty wide perspective and a deeper understanding of some of the ways that you can help people. So I talked about communication at the beginning, and I'm going to bang on about it again because it is so important. It's not just how we communicate, it's what we say, and employees will remember how we made them feel right now. It's a really, really difficult time. It's not necessarily all about money or work. It's about how people feel. People are scared. People are unsure of what to do. And actually, that communication from the workforce, from your employer, is really, really important. Whether you're furlough, whether you're working, whether you're home working, whoever you are, that communication is so, so important. And what we've been doing is we actually do mental health and wellbeing risk assessments. So that when we do we've got the home working risk assessments that are more about the physical space and the amount of breaks people are taking and how they want to communicate. But then we go further and do a mental health and a wellbeing risk assessment. Now, I actually think these are the best way to really truly understand the well-being and the mental health of your team. And I don't think you can do these by asking the questions to your staff, because from research and just from experience and knowing when I had a breakdown, I didn't want to tell my manager the extent of how awful I was feeling, because I was concerned that it would be used against me. As a lawyer in a firm, and it was scary. And actually, when you've got anxiety and you're already worrying about everything, it's an additional worry. So the recommendation that I would give regarding risk assessments is all around using technology. And actually, we can't see people face to face right now, so why not embrace technology when doing these assessments? And we use a company that basically it's an online anonymous platform, and it's just brilliant. They basically send the information out to the employee goes through the assessment. It's accredited, and it's amazing because it's built by academics and medical professionals. So it's got the same scales that you have when you go for counselling or CBT or a diagnosis for depression and anxiety, so you can actually identify if someone's meeting those moderate to severe anxiety or depression symptoms. So the point of the assessment is twofold. One is to empower and educate that individual. They get a self-assessment report at the end, and it is bespoke to them depending on what they put into the system. And those algorithms work in a really, really impressive way, actually. And when we've used so many different assessments, but this is definitely the best one that we found. And basically they get a report and things that they have to do for themselves, because we have to encourage people to take care of themselves, to practice self-care, to take breaks, but they also have to be empowered to do that for themselves. So one of the things that the report's really good is it gives them 3 areas to work on, and then what we're doing is revisiting that every 2 to 3 months. Before lockdown we were actually only doing them every 6 months, but I think because the climate is changing so quickly, our mental health isn't linear, and it's really important that we keep checking in, and this is a really non-intrusive way to check in because it's anonymous. So you don't see what that report, but what you do see as a business, you get a company report. And the report's brilliant from a company perspective because you understand all of the issues within your workplace. So how many people, or the percentage of people who have got anxiety, depression, musculoskeletal issues, sleep issues, like literally everything, so that you as a business can target your training using the data from your staff, and your staff are much more likely to be honest through an assessment that is anonymous than they are if they sit down and then you have to collate all that evidence, and actually they're probably not going to tell you the full extent of the cause of some of their stress or anxiety, and they might not tell you that they even have anxiety or depression because of the stigma still in society. And actually I think that the results are quite surprising because it goes quite deep, and it actually asks people about suicide and suicidal thoughts, and I've seen every report I've seen come back from every business that we've worked with, who some of our clients have used it, they've all come back with really interesting results that every time the client says, oh my god, I did not know that. So I think the message there for me is like, don't assume what your staff need, don't just put training on that you think they need or you think is good. Ask them. If you don't want to use a platform, do an anonymous survey whereby you're asking questions that elicit the information that you would need to properly support them. And it is so important to do that because, you know, it can seem like a bit of a tick box exercise, and we've just had Mental Health Awareness Week, which for many employees with mental health problems actually see it, they don't like it because they see it as a mental health tick box exercise. Oh, we've done a blog, or we've done a webinar or whatever, but actually it's more than that, and it's that consistency. And I think by actually engaging with these types of assessments and using the data and revisiting it, not only do you allow that consistency to be apparent within the workforce, but you actually are able to then start to measure a return on investment. You're identifying the areas that need support. You're able to then revisit it and see whether that actually has had an impact. So when you revisit it, you'll obviously get the percentages and whether they've gone up or down. So I just find it really, really helpful, and that's part of the communication pieces. So once you've done that, don't just do it and then not do anything with it. It's about, these were our results, this is what we're going to do, these are the areas we're going to work on, and it can just help you form a strategy, because a lot of organisations really want to support staff and they really do want to kind of do something, but it's kind of, what do we do and how do we start? So regardless of what stage you're at with mental health in the workplace, the starting point is always asking the staff, what do they need, what do they want, how are they feeling? And there are, like I say, there are many ways in which you can do that, but communication is so important when it comes to establishing that initial strategy, because if you don't know what they want, you could build a strategy based on the complete opposite to what your team need, and then it's just a waste of time, a waste of money, and they become disengaged. So really, really important. If anyone wants me to introduce them to any of the companies that I'm talking about, I'm more than happy to. Just email me afterwards. So the other thing that I would just highlight is, at the moment, because we're on lockdown and there's a lot of uncertainty, people with anxiety, me, and OCD are finding it quite difficult actually, because we don't like uncertainty. That's kind of part of the condition. It's the inability to deal with uncertainty and the overwhelming fear of something bad happening. So the problem with these conditions right now is that they're massively exacerbated, and this is just a catalyst for further symptoms. So it's just being mindful that you might not know someone has these conditions, but they might manifest in ways that look like the person isn't able to perform their job, and actually they can do their job, they're just struggling right now. So again, you're not going to know these things unless you have already, or if you already know, great, ask them what support they need and try and communicate with them in a way that supports them. But if you don't know, then this is an opportunity for you to really find out who is suffering. And, you know, part of the risk assessments, asking people how they are. It's so important that we ask people how they are, not just once, actually know how are you. And it's really hard to spot symptoms when you're virtual, because you're not sat in an office, you can't see their posture, you don't see them all day, you might only speak to them once a day. So it's really, really hard to spot symptoms. So that's, again, why communication and risk assessments are so important. But like I say, anxiety and OCD are a real, it's a real issue at the moment. We're seeing a lot of people who, especially people who are still having to work and go into the office, where social distancing measures are questionable, that it just sends people into a complete meltdown. And employers just need to have a real air of understanding around the condition that their employee may be suffering from. And obviously with depression, it's social isolation can make that worse. So you've got all these different conditions where they can be definitely exacerbated by the current climate, and obviously by the constant change as well and the uncertainty. So what can employers do? So I've talked about the fact that you can do the risk assessments and the various risk assessments, and I've literally banged on about it because I do think it's so important. But actually, you can encourage your staff to take regular breaks, to not be overwhelmed by the amount of information they're absorbing. At Thrive, we don't actually watch the news, we watch the updates on the evening, and we do an update to our clients, and we keep updated with hard facts. We strive to stay away from just scrolling on social media on the just on the headlines, because there's a lot that's put in the headlines that's not actually true, and it's really, really difficult, especially as a business owner, to understand what you need to do and whether the rules have changed. So I would stick to the official updates and the official guidance where possible. That definitely will help with that confusion and uncertainty. A couple of initiatives that I've run, actually, I'm just going to talk to you about those. So some of these things are will definitely not be for your business, but I'm going to just talk to you about a couple of different things that we've done at Thrive that my staff all said that they loved. So I have a smile file for my staff. It's a file where whenever they get good feedback, or someone, if they presented a webinar and someone emails them afterwards with feedback, or a client or something positive, they have to cut it out and put it in this file. And then at the end of the year, we all go through that together. It's just a really nice way of focusing on some positives at this really difficult time, and it's something physical off the computer to do, which I really like. It's really good for your mental health to have that time. So every Friday I tell them to spend an hour, or even if they've not got an awful lot to put in it, it's just making them review their week and reflect for the good things, and it has a really nice positive impact. Something that I do is I practice gratitude, and I, as a business owner, and obviously with my mental health, have to have quite a strict routine. I get up, I exercise, and then I write 3 things I'm grateful for, and then I get on with my day. And then at the end of the day, I write 3 wins from my day. So I'm always starting and ending the day in a positive, and I've encouraged my team to adopt a similar approach, and they've all said that it's really, really helped them stay focused and change their mindset from what was really negative to something quite positive. We have our Making a Difference Awards, so with the MAD Awards, aptly named. We basically have the team just anonymously vote for each other, and at the end of the month, an employee can win either a £20 Amazon voucher or a day's holiday. And then at the end of the year, everybody goes back in, and we have like a full awards thing. We're only tiny, we've got a team of 10. It's just a really nice way to recognise some of the hard work that people are doing. I think it's definitely the little things that are really making a difference right now, and celebrating those small wins is so important. And then the other thing I did was I sent some bits in the post that around Easter. I sent them an Easter gift, and just really small things, like I actually just sent a little card, and it just said I'm super grateful, and it just had a personal message for every employee. And it barely took me any time, it cost nothing, but it made a real impact. And one of my team was having a really, really difficult time, and I don't know how it took so long. It literally took forever to get there, but when it did arrive, it arrived on a day when she was feeling particularly mentally unwell, and it really changed her mindset, and she said it just made the biggest difference. So you just don't know where people are on their journey, and even with the risk assessments and the communication, people's mental health will go up and down. And I think it's really important that you know, we do what we can as employers, and you know, encourage people to look after themselves. It's so important that they do that. So I've popped on the slides Thrive Wellbeing. It's not actually launched yet. It's our new online mental health training, and it's basically interactive training about all conditions, and the employee gets a mental health champion certificate at the end. It takes about 1 to 2 hours depending on how quickly they move through the modules. But it's also got a managers section where we've got documents for people to support them, either toolkits, managers guides, template policies. I think we've got over 15 different wellbeing policies and initiatives, forms that you can use, risk assessments, stuff like that. So the idea behind it really is to support people virtually at this time. It's something that I've been developing for a while, and it's about to launch. So if anyone does want information, in June and July it'll be 50% off. So if anyone does want that information, please do let me know, and you can have a look at the portal. But the idea really is to get everybody trained. I think the difficulty with just training to a few people is that the whole workforce needs to really understand what these mental health conditions are, whether they've got symptoms, and actually it's a bit deeper than just sending, because we're all mental health first aid trained, but some organisations can only afford to maybe send a couple of people on mental health first aid because it is really expensive. So this is a really cost effective way to train your entire workforce, but also they can revisit it at any time over the 12 months. You get access for 12 months. And I think, again, that's really important because, you know, they might do the training today, but then in a week's time, they might really need it, but then they've already done it and there was something in there that they wanted to go back to. So having stuff like that, I think, is really helpful because people can dip in and out when they want. And actually, like I said before, you know, people take things differently depending on where they are in their journey. So having that access and support is really helpful. And actually, for managers, it's really, like, managers have it really hard because they have to have those difficult conversations. They have to manage people with mental health problems, and it is difficult for the employee and for the manager because that conversation it feels awkward for both of them. And the whole point of us educating people around mental health is so that we can have the confidence to have those difficult conversations and feel that we have the skills to actually help people and know what we can and can't do or can and can't say. So some of the things that we try and help people with on that is, you know, what kind of things would you ask in that conversation, and, you know, create a form so that there's a guide so you don't forget to ask certain things, because, you know, with the best will in the world, it's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it as well. So, you know, some of that training is really important for managers to allow employees to open up, because they're just not going to otherwise. So in terms of mental health, like I say, there's quite a lot there. I think from our perspective, the key things I would say is communication is really important. The risk assessments are so important, and then invest in some training. They're the three key areas at the moment that are just constantly coming through our advice line. I talked about the advice line. Actually, it's free. We set it up at the beginning of in fact in February we set it up before all this madness happened, just when the virus had kind of hit. And it's coronavirus@thrivelaw.co.uk, and really the aim of that was to ease anxiety for people in these positions where they didn't know what to do. So if you have a question afterwards that if you forgot to ask it today, then by all means email that email address and we can provide you with a free answer or advice on whatever your query is. So hopefully that's helpful for people moving forward, and kind of know that there's a lot of information to take in, but actually there's continued support. So that takes me on to the next slide. We've got I think it's the Q&A now. Yeah, so does anyone want to ask any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Jodie. So we've had a couple of people submit some questions just in terms of I think some of the points you've made, asking where they can locate them. So I don't know if you perhaps want to share them with me and I can send them with the follow-up, or you can contact the people directly. But some people have asked for if you can share the home risk assessment.
Yeah, so I've got a home working policy and a home working risk assessment. If people want them, just email me, because rather than send them to everyone who doesn't want them, it's easier just for us to do it that way. So just email me what you want. So you can either, there's the transcript of the talk with all the links in. I've got a home working policy and a home working risk assessment. If anyone, and if you want me to introduce you to the owner of the wellbeing company that we use, the mental health risk assessment. So there's the two different ones. For the home working one, it's just a document that I've got that I can give you. That's absolutely fine. But for the other one, we pay a company to do it. So we don't, I don't have details for that. I'd have to introduce you to them. If that makes sense.
Okay. That's fine. So when I send the follow-up, I'll send to everybody who's asked for something extra, or something on the back of what Jodie has said. I will include Jodie's email address in my email, because I haven't included it on this slide. So if I just pop it in there, and then if you want to filter through any requests that you have off the back of any of the support tools that Jodie has mentioned today. Jodie, I actually have a question myself. In terms of home working as it stands at the moment, as you mentioned, it's obviously quite difficult to really understand and see where people are in terms of their mental state. It is difficult for people to be working remotely, especially if they haven't done before, and they're now thrown into this environment where they might have children at home, they might have other family members, and it is difficult to do your job day to day, and you don't also have that support on tap. Say from an employer's perspective, you are looking at reopening the office now that you can, as long as those social distancing measures are in place and you have those guidelines and all the health and safety requirements have been met in order to be able to do that. Working life still isn't going to be as people know it, so there will be things like you need to be wearing PPE, you need to be wearing the masks and stuff. Say that actually hasn't really had a positive impact on how somebody was feeling, because it is still not the same. How is it best to support those employees who actually, from moving from home back into the office, it still hasn't improved?
Well, I think from my perspective, and what we're doing at Thrive, is we're actually not going to make people go back in unless they feel ready. I think it's I don't think you can, obviously everyone was thrown into home working, but I don't think you can ask everyone just to come back. I think there has to be a bit of an integrated approach, and people will feel really anxious about, because they kind of got in their little bubble now, haven't they? We're all working at home. I absolutely love it. I'm in my living room. I can be in my gym clothes most of the time. It's great. But the reality is, this transition back, that is going to be the biggest challenge, I think, yet, because we're not going to see the impact. So everyone's at home, and the impact when we first went home was really, really difficult. Then the impact moving forward into a new normal is going to be profound. And I think from an employer's perspective, we need to manage that change well, and ways in which we can do that are by understanding which employees actually want to come back into the office. That if they can do their role from home, can you allow them to continue that and gradually get people back? I think a lot of organisations are actually going to make, and I saw Twitter posted something about it, and we've said the same. You don't have to come back unless you want to, because actually everyone's performing well at home. So what's the need for the rush? And I think that slowly approach will really help people come to terms with it. And actually, by the time they do come back fully, the risk is probably much lower. And I think it's balancing that risk, isn't it? And actually, as an employer, like you said, you've got to think about all your social distancing measures and comply with all of the government guidance, because people are worried. I mean, I hadn't even been to a shop till last week. I was, but that's just the nature of my condition. I didn't want to go outside, apart from to exercise. And I know a lot of employees who've been like that. We've had loads of people come through the advice line where they're saying, my employer's talking about me going back to work. Really interesting one, actually, but I've got children, but the schools aren't open. And they're like, what do I do? Because they're asking me to go back to work, and they're like, so what we've been advising in those circumstances is, the government clearly haven't thought about this. They've not opened schools but told people to go back to work, in the construction industry, but also, just unfurloughing people. There's a bit of a rotation in a lot of organisations, and what we're finding is, employers haven't thought about it either. A lot of people, it's not no criticism of anybody. It's just that it's a reality that some people are homeschooling and home working, and it's almost impossible to do two things at once like that, to the extent that's needed, and that has a really profound impact. So if you're asking people to come back, it's definitely worth considering their personal circumstances and whether they've got childcare as well, because if all their childcare is still shut and you're asking someone to come back, that's going to really impact on their ability to do that. So flexibility is really important, I think. Moving forward, hopefully employers see this as a way to move away from the 9 till 5, and you know, in the office 9 till 5 being visible. I think it's clear that we don't need that in society, and what you know, we need human contact, but we need to get used to the new normal, and that will take a long time. I think when the new, you know, when I said before, the new furlough stuff is announced, there'll be further guidance about some advice on what people should be doing, and there's some suggestion of varying shift patterns and only allowing a certain amount of people in. So you probably can't have everybody back straight away anyway. Kind of encouraging, I think what the government are going to do is encourage that flexible phased return rather than everybody's back, because that could cause a further spike if everybody just goes straight back, even with social distancing measures, because it's really difficult in an office, isn't it, when you know everyone's kind of sat in the same room in the aircon. You know, it's really, really difficult to fully eliminate any risk. So yeah, I think it's a real challenge moving forward, and I think we're definitely doing, we're already in that process with a couple of clients where we're kind of guiding them through some of the legalities around that, and just generally from a HR perspective what they need to do. But it's very bespoke to each organisation. There's not a one size fits all, but definitely keep an eye on the guidance when that comes out.
Perfect, thank you. Someone else has asked, how would you advise giving information to employees on how to manage their stress or mental health in relation to work if they have explicitly said they don't want any information?
Well, you're entitled as an employer to communicate with them on that basis. So I'd probably do it in two ways. I would do it initially as a training session. And say, you know, everybody's got to attend, and it might be on a Zoom, so you could get someone to come in and talk about it, and then follow up documents that have some top tips on how they can support themselves. So one of the things that's really popular at the moment is looking at people's resilience, because it's, you know, their ability to bounce back from this situation. So a lot of workplaces are looking at that at the moment. So having that combined approach of some actual training followed up with some email correspondence with some top tips on how they can support themselves, I think is probably the best way to do it in the current circumstances.
Perfect. I think that's actually it for the questions we've had through. Someone else has asked if we'll be sending the webinar. Yeah, I will send a link to the recording. I can also send a copy of the slides, although Jodie mainly spoke, to be honest, but I can still send those out if you want them. And the session will be available for however long you need it for. So if you want to go back, or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues, please feel free to do so. If you do have any further questions, as I said, I'll include Jodie's email if you're okay for people to submit any questions to you, Jodie, or how do you want to manage it?
That's absolutely fine. If anyone's got any questions and didn't want to ask them on here, then yeah, absolutely fine for you to email me. And like I said, if you want a transcript of the talk or any of the other documents we talked about, then please do get in touch. I'm more than happy to help. It's just interesting to see where people are at, and even if it's not a question but you want to kind of update, you know, tell me what you guys are doing, then let me know, because it's really helpful for us to see the wider landscape of how people are dealing with these things and what some of their challenges are.
Yeah, perfect. Oh, okay. Actually, we've just had one question come through. You've referred to paid for resources, health and mental health assessments, etc., and tools to help conversations around mental health. Are there any free or lower cost ones that are available?
I don't know, is the answer to that. I'm sure if you have a look online, there might be. If you have a look on, so This Is Me is a charity that I'm actually about to launch in Yorkshire, but they're already launched in a lot of areas, and they have 3 areas on the website. One's the Green Ribbon Appeal, one's about storytelling, and the other is a wellbeing toolkit, I think. So you'd have to have a look on the website, but if it's called This Is Me, and I know the Samaritan, so if you want free stuff, you're going to have to go to charities websites. So things like Heads Together, Mind, Mindful Employer, This Is Me, all of those, Time to Talk, Mental Health Foundation, all of those mental health charities will have some stuff on there. I obviously can't say whether I've not used them, so I can't kind of guarantee the quality, but by all means have a look online. There's loads and loads of free resources. You just got to dig around a little bit.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, yeah, so that's it for the questions, but I will, as I said, I'll include Jodie's email in my follow-up. I'll send that out tomorrow. So yeah, feel free to filter any questions to Jodie, and then Jodie can also pick up anyone who, if you want to submit and ask and request for any of the tools, the recommendations that Jodie's made today, send those submissions through to her once I've sent the email address, and she'll be more than happy to support and send those out. So thanks, Jodie, for running through the presentation today. I personally really enjoyed the session, so thank you so much. And yeah, I hope you all continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, bye.
Take care, bye.